Hotep family, this is Mkuu Mzee, and I am here with my saber, my boy, my buddy, my good friend, Dr. Tdka, Maat, Kilimanjaro. Let the family know how you feeling, my brother.
Hotep all. Good to see you all. I've been blocked from Facebook for about a month. So this is my first chance to get out of it. Thank you, sir, for being so kind as to drive all the way down here just to bring little old me some comfort.
I'll be a little bit more forthcoming than I have been in the past. I am coming down here off and on every couple of months to look at relocating from where I'm at now in the Northeast. Well, I'm in the Northeast, but up in the New Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania area. I'll be moving down here into the South Carolina area. So just to let the family know, this is one of the reasons why I'm down here with the brother as often as I have been, more often than I have been. So that's what's going on with me.
Yes, sir.
And so I also plan on being with this brother more often once I get.
We got work to
do. We got work to do.
Yes, sir. I
look forward to it. Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Quasi, the brother who has the after school program in South Carolina, in Fort Mill, and also to Kendall Anderson over in North Carolina. Our brothers from the Raising Awareness Group, Saba Olatunji Bwamba, and our young friend Kufu Aku Mental Hotep. I'm going to reach out to all you guys and say hello.
Yes.
So while we're here is, we thought that was very important that we highlight a part of this book, BAK2. Now this happens to be the latest expanded edition of BAK2, and I'll let Dr. Tdka explain to us why chapter 37, an aged economy, how this aged economy has gotten old, why it is in is what you call the dying stages, is
yes.
You know, the dying throes of an economy.
Yes.
And then where we're going. So I'll let you take it away from here, and then we can kind of
go back,
have dialogue on that.
I look forward to it. Thank you again, sir, for setting this up. In the past, we've discussed a lot of history, mainly ancient history, and we've organized our systems of thought around that ancient history. And obviously, you identify Kemet as a foundation for it. So we've done a book called Maat, Guiding Principles of Moral Living, and we've done a book that dealt with philosophy, Ka, and we also just did the art of research. So what we've done usually puts us in a position where people think that we're just concerned with ancient history.
Right.
When in fact, most of our work as a scientist is tied to our political economy work. And Box Square is the basis for our understanding of what took place in the United States, how it developed over time out of Europeans forced out of Europe through a dying society, forms of society.
That's what people need to know.
Yeah, they didn't
come over here. Yeah.
They were forced out, looking for places to live. And they were forced out at a point where for them, feudalism was over. That is why they didn't plant feudalism over here. You know, you see, they didn't bring kings and queens over here. So they left that political structure over there because they rejected it. And so when you reject something, you've got to have something that you're going into. So what they were going into would ultimately end up being a capitalist system, and you got a certain political structure that goes with that. And kings and queens are not a part of it. So what we said was 1492, can we sum it up quickly? That was the invasion period. Almost 4 million square miles of land was taken for what became the United States, part of North America. Obviously Canada is the other part of North America. And that was planted here, 1619, Jamestown. Obviously they came in 1607, but by 1619, that former system was planted, and they began to bring Africans here as enslaved population. That's 1619. And so quickly we moved to a point where they embryonically formed as a nation, 1700s to 1750s. And then by 1775, they had in place a Declaration of Independence in preparation for forming a nation. And by the late 1790s, they had in place a constitutional structure that evolved out of Articles of Confederations and ultimately ended up with a government for this system, this capitalist system.
Right.
Still evolving, black people are at the foundation of it, at that economy. So we're brought here to work. This is why it's so important that in this period in history, we understand what's occurring, where computer automated machine production is replacing wage labor. So when you got a population that was brought here to work and there's no need for them to work, that's why the central question in chapter 37 came up. So we have that diagram that takes us all the way through the period where the technology moved from manual production with a tool to manual production with a simple machine to manual production with a complex machine that moved into a mechanical production, which meant the steam engine and all of that was in place and began to replace workers. Once you move past the mechanical production, you move into semi-automated, which obviously is the period when assembly lines were put in place and ultimately cars, trucks, everything else that could be produced on the assembly line was evolved. And so that moved us into 1930s and 40s, ultimately moving from semi-automated in that period leading into the 50s, where you now begin to replace workers with automated machine production. That's in the 70s. And that coincided with the period in history where blacks were just getting opportunities to come out of the agricultural area. You see, we were trapped in the agricultural area. They kept us there. So not only did they keep us in the agricultural area, they kept us uneducated because they obviously didn't need us to have any form of even high school education to do picking cotton. But once they needed us for a temporary period in the manufacturing area, they opened the way for us to get some high school and a little college education. But that door closed quickly. By the 1980s, automated machine production was transitioning into computer automated machine production. And so by the 90s, you had a mature form of it. And so you then have people being forced out of agriculture completely. You have people being forced out of manufacturing. We had just gotten in there. And you get people being forced out of construction. We were just getting in there in detail. And so now you have a situation where they start bringing in populations just to do the work as free as possible in comparison with the robotic technology that's doing it anyway. So they bring the Hispanics in. But you got a lesson from that too, that they don't need them anymore. So now they completely close them out of agriculture, and then now they're putting them out of the country, the ones that they can't use. And their children. They don't care. So they're completely putting the parents and their children out of the country. So having said that, the Hispanics are closed off from the agricultural area, and now they're being closed off from the manufacturing area. And then obviously the area that they had the strongest second to the agriculture was in construction. And that's being closed because robotic technology now lays bricks. And some of the materials already prefabricated, and so it's just put in place. So I say all that to say, this was important as a discussion for us because we are, even though the Census Bureau doesn't target us properly as far as our complete size, we're at least 50 million people in this country. And we are 50 million people tied to an obsolete form of technology that ultimately ends up meaning that we're the first ones to be let go when the technology is replaced. So every step of the way, you begin to appreciate how important it is to begin to discuss not only how we got to this point, which is why BAK is so big, 1,050 pages, but where are we at and what does that mean for us? So that is why I asked to do that for this.
You know, one of the things as you were talking, I also thought about too the obvious reasons why there's a shift, a geographical shift of the technology. Now, if you think about the Appalachians and the Bethlehem area, Pittsburgh area.
Yes.
How prosperous they were with iron ore and steel
Mining
things.
technology.
There was a shift.
Yes.
But what we don't understand is that once they strip that land of all the resources, they move and move on to another country.
That's right.
Okay,
That's
so
right.
it's not because the technology came in and changed that industry. It's the fact that there was nothing there to take anymore
In that
particular area.
Yeah.
You know, so people need to understand that either they're going to get replaced by technology or they're going to get replaced when the resources dry up.
Yeah, and so you bring that up, which is most important. Most people lose sight of that, and what is important is the capitalists have to maximize profits. They have to go wherever they can do to maximize them. That is why they let the Hispanics in, because they knew that they could let them work in the agricultural area at such a base low pay rate
Right.
that it would be reflected while they're still working on the technology
Right.
of the robotic technology that replaced them.
Exactly.
So that's why they did that. But as soon as they got that technology mature enough to be able to implement it on all these farms, where the cotton is, obviously I know the cotton pickers has been in place for a while,
Right.
but the harvesters, the planters, all of that machine technology, whole fields now don't need a person out there. You just need a person driving there.
Yeah.
And now they're changing to the point where those things are driverless.
That's true.
And so they plant the seed, they nurture the seed, they water it with the technology, and they harvest it. This is agriculture.
Yeah.
It's almost 98.5% mechanized to the level of computer automated machine production.
Amazing that you said that because, well, I'm a Trekkie.
Yes.
I'm a scientific. I'm a tech head. This particular series that's on, I believe it's on CBS Access. It's a Star Trek series, but the name of it is called Picard. And anybody who knows about Star Trek knows about Captain Picard, who was the head of the Enterprise. But anyway, this is him now at an elderly age. He's in his 70s and 80s now. He's retired.
Yes.
Out of Star Trek.
Yes.
Somehow they bring him back into the Confederation.
Yeah.
I ain't got to go into the story, but what is amazing about that is that on his retirement farm, he was a Frenchman. He loved his wine and stuff. He had at least 300, 400, maybe 500 acres of grapevines. Not one person out there. They showed, and it was amazing. They showed this shot of machines doing everything
Yes.
on that farm.
Yes.
Tilling, fertilizing, picking the grapes, all that stuff. And he had one man there taking care of everything.
That's right.
As himself.
That's right.
It was just, I said, see, they tell you what's going to happen,
Yeah.
but we just don't look. We say, oh, that's science fiction. No, that's not science fiction.
We're there. I'm glad you
We're
used that
there.
analogy. Yeah, you use that analogy, and that's a great one because that's what we're talking about. People are thinking that's 20 years from now, 30 years from now. It's in place.
It's in place right now.
They pick the grapes with machines now. Can pick the grapes with machines. Can pick the apples. And something that needs dexterity, like strawberries. They pick strawberries.
Something that was impossible 10, 20 years ago. Now they can do it now.
Oranges is easy. And so things that they couldn't do 20 years ago, the machines do it now. Robotized machines do it now.
Yeah.
Not only the planting, but they do the picking now. So that's why whole populations can be targeted to be expelled on some technical legality because they don't want them here labor-wise. They don't want to have to take care of them because they know they won't have jobs. Other jobs will be taking jobs from white folks.
Yeah.
So we have to get to that. And I'm glad that you asked me to really go in detail on this with chapter 37.
I think, definitely. I thought it was very, very important. The aging of the economy and of this system is of utmost importance to us.
Yes.
They know how to move on. We just don't know how to do it.
Yeah. And the problem with most black folk, and this is what I have to say about us, is we're not really studying things as processes. We get in there, and I've seen a lot of debates that have been going on, where people have a piece of information and they latch onto it, and they're trying to compare it to a piece of information somebody else has that they've latched onto. So they get into a debate, not understanding that both of them may be right. That piece of information, just like, I'll give you a good example of it, it's like a person with a mask on and they're standing near an elephant. The elephant is standing there, and so they lean up against it. They think it's a wall. They put their hands on the trunk, and they think it's a snake. They put their hands on the feet, and this is a huge tree. This is a big tree. Not recognizing that it's all of that.
Right.
But it's all of that into one thing.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to say. We've got to get better at being process thinkers. Spending a lot of time on something, understanding where it fits. So you never would see me debating and arguing with anybody about anything, because really I listen to what they say, and if it's factual, evidence-wise, I'm trying to find out where it fits. And so this is what we're discussing now about where does this process fit. We have an economy that's based on production, distribution, exchange, consumption, and reproduction of the necessities of life. Everything is built on that. It's not built on money, it's built on that.
Yes.
The money is just the means of circulation. The money allows you to circulate what's produced in the economy.
That's right.
You're producing glasses, producing shirts, cars, producing houses. The money allows you to circulate it.
Right.
That's the circulation stage. So production is taking place. It used to be taking place with a human being leading. Now it's taking place in a lot of different sectors with technology leading,
Right.
robotized technology. So we explained this earlier when you and I were talking. I said the problem with an aged economy is that it goes into a transition where the basis for the circulation changes.
Right.
You see, wage labor was the basis for the circulation, or wage and salary labor.
Right.
You go to work 8 hours, you get your check, and you go to the grocery store. From that check, you buy your food. You living in a house, you renting, you pay your rent. If you're paying for a mortgage, you pay your mortgage. If you got a car, you pay your car note with that money from wage labor. You labored, you got your wage. You labored, you got your salary. When robotized technology replaces that, see, we're not talking about labor saving anymore. That was in the 1960s, 70s.
Right.
We're talking about replacing. Then you have huge populations that are not, they don't necessarily have a profitable work for them, except in prison.
Yeah.
And so once you have that, it eats away at each area. So in manufacturing, you have the industries, thousands of industries in manufacturing where it's being robotized. You have in construction, thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of industries in construction being robotized. You have agriculture where there are thousands and thousands of industries from production, distribution, exchange, consumption being robotized.
Right.
And the people are being flushed out of that. And that's what we're talking about. Where do they end up? Well, they end up in service. And what is service? That was our discussion. It's the place where you're piecing together 2 or 3 jobs that would have paid the same as a manufacturing job in the 1980s. You're piecing together 3 or 4 jobs, which means you're working, instead of 8 hours, you're working 16 to 20 hours. Some people even close to their whole day and night, part of the night, trying to get enough money to pay the bills.
Let me capsulize that from your own words, from your own book. Again, we're in chapter 37. I'm not sure what page this is. I think it might be. Anyway, you guys will find it. The pressure of such transformations have been released historically by a combination of methods. 1, allow a person to slowly rot from hunger, homelessness, disease, and mental distress, imprison useless workers, you just said that, and force them to work as institutionalized slaves. That's going on right now.
Yes.
2, ship the poor, take destitute to colonize and steal lands and resources from other peoples around the world.
Yeah.
That means that we are now voluntarily signing up into the military, various military units. 3, provide a population of social waste with the instrument of false reasons to destroy itself. 4, reduce population, birth, fertility, and growth rates. We know the numbers behind that. 5, artificially accelerate the spread of fatal diseases via injection, gift, a smallpox blanket. Well, that was the Indian gift.
Yes.
Or other systematically arranged social vector. When it works, no matter how old it is, no matter, the game is the game. The only thing that changes is the delivery system.
That's right.
4, 5, artificially accelerate the spread of fatal diseases via injection. Okay, we all just did that. Number 6, send workers to war in defense of profits. Speaks for itself. 7, incite programs aimed at the massacre of a population which has been scapegoated as a source of crime, delinquency, poverty, social unrest, and economic crisis, or when all else fails. That's black people, that's you Africans. 8, implement the final solution. Example, extermination in the form relative to the technical destructive capacities of the society. And that wraps up pretty much everything that you said.
That's right, and I'm glad you pulled us out to that one. And they need to look at that carefully because that's not guesswork. That's taken from 3 forms of society that passed. And what I mean by that, Europeans didn't come over here by accident. They were forced out. And when they got here, they did what was necessary to take this whole landmass. I shouldn't say just the landmass here. I'm talking about the whole Western Hemisphere. Mm-hmm. They took it all. You're talking about the whole half of the earth. They literally took. And so I say all that to say, that was at the death of feudalism. That was at the end of feudalism. So it's important to really study societies as they are born, develop, and then die, so you can understand what's going to happen in the next one. See, it's not going to be exact, but it's certainly going to be quicker.
Right.
It's going to be faster. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're dealing with now, how fast this process is unfolding, that those are opening up. For
you people that, because I want to make sure you guys knew where I got that from, that would have been page 935 of chapter 37. And this particular paragraph is conditions of an emerging final solution.
Yeah.
And we can see that some of those solutions are aged, they're old, but they still are very effective.
Yes, sir. And so I'm really happy that you pointed our readers to that. And this is why we take this part of it so seriously, because we know every step of the way we had to incrementally study for over the last 30 years this social system as it has developed over time, just to get an understanding of where it's at right now. And obviously the conditions now that are driving people out of manufacturing, out of construction, out of mining, out of agriculture, all those industries into the service area, where now those 8 things that you're talking about are being brought back to life in an open way, And again, even though some of them are not directly impacting upon you, you may not be in prison, but there's a whole lot of black folk that are in prison. In fact, the United States is the largest imprisoner of populations in the world, literally, inclusive of China, Europe, mainly Europe, and part of the Arab world. The United States has more people in prison than them put together. So, and most of those people that are in prison are black people. And they are in prison for property crimes, or as you said, drugs. So it has nothing to do with anything other than being in a bad situation that you end up trying to find a way to make a living in a way that's nefarious. And this is what has occurred, and it will continue to occur on a higher level as more and more people are forced into that situation.
Wow.
So yeah, I wanted to get that in place, and then we can actually go into detail about what's taking place with respect to each area.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's do that now.
Okay. What I just said was, and we have a diagram to show it. You know, we make sure that there's a diagram.
I'm going to have this up on the I'm going to have this up on the video.
That you're talking about the foundation of a society being its economy. That's the first stage. You know, how things are produced, distributed, exchanged, consumed, and reproduced. You're talking about the necessities of life being produced. That's the first thing. And obviously from that production, folk are put in a position where they can, through their labor, purchase those things. Without the ability to go to work and get those resources, financial resources, in order, and right now it's not even a check, it's put on your card or something. So without that capability, they're put into these situations that ultimately end up being nefarious. And what I mean by that is, we have on the sheet, underground economy. We put in situations
it's very real. It's very real.
Well, that's what we had to put it there. Yeah, underground economy, where people have to find ways to live and get resources, financial resources, that are not tied to respectable state sanctioned activity. And so again, we end up with a situation where populations that were in production being forced out, populations in distribution being forced out with the technology replacing them, the populations, the financial population, the populations that are dealing with exchange. You see what happened with the stock market the other day, where instead of human beings there, it kicked in with the technology and computers that they lost over 2,000 points in the Dow.
Right.
Just like that. Never happened before.
Right.
On that scale. Having said that, they had to close down trading, I think they said 15 minutes, I don't know exactly what it was, but the point I'm trying to make is that's computer driven. Whereas human beings might have made a decision in a different way quicker.
Yeah.
That would have closed that thing down quicker. But having said that, even in the exchange area, banking, obviously tellers and all of those being replaced efficiently by these ATM machines and all the technology that's in the bank now, where you don't even have to see a person.
Right.
You do it online. And then the whole process of consuming stuff, the consumption process, and even the education consumption process, where they put in a place where you see this coronavirus unfolding, and all the universities that already have the web-based education are able to close their schools and send the children home and say, don't come back here for your safety, just get online. The class is online. Where the schools that don't have those resources, and many of them, the HBCUs, they're not able to do that. And so they actually, some of them put their children at risk because they're not able to carry that kind of activity
That's
out.
correct.
And so again, as we keep moving through this process, the point I wanted to make that really brings home what I'm bringing home is that the next question becomes, as these changes take place, and this is what's been problematic for us as a people, is that we're always tailing stuff, meaning we're always behind it, because we've never done the preliminary work that allowed us to know what was going to happen ahead of time and then to do it. I'll give you a good example of it. There was a time when IBM was ahead of everybody on the research with respect to Windows technology, meaning the software.
Right.
And they made these studies that showed that people liked the pictures more so than the coding, trying to type in the words and numbers and stuff, trying to tell the computer what to do. No, put a picture there, attach it to it, and behind the scenes have the coding
code would be there.
Well, they didn't use that.
They didn't use it.
It sat on the shelf.
Sat right there.
Bill Gates got his hands on it.
Stole it.
He got his hands on it. And he used it.
Yep.
And so what happens with us is we go through situations where we don't even do that research, preliminary research, to be able to know that, okay, this is what's happened in the past. This is how it's happened under this social system. This social system is at that point now where it's happening again.
Right.
What should we do?
What should we do?
See, we haven't done that. And so we don't take seriously processes where people carefully identify evidence of, it's like a diagnosis, evidence of something characteristic of a certain type of disease. You then can establish what the disease is and a prognosis for recovery based on where the person is at with the disease. Well, that's what we're doing with BAK2. We're showing what the diagnosis is based on what has happened in the past with this, quote, economic disease when a society is passing. And we're showing, well, this is what's going to happen if you don't do something about it. Your prognosis is for recovery
Right
goes down from step 1 to 8. You listed them. And they move on that last one. This is what we were talking about earlier about these major Nazi movements unfolding in this country. While we're messing around, people have armed themselves in militias. Tens of millions of people are now running around in militia groups, mainly white folk, with their guns, preparing to shoot at something. And again, I don't need to tell you what the something is.
No.
Okay. Well, that's where we're at right now. And all through all of this, most of the thinking black folk that I know are somewhere caught in the 19th century. trying to be a petty capitalist, not understanding that in order to be profitable in anything that they are in charge of, you got to have what they have. You see, you can't make a car cheaper than they can make it when they got robots doing it.
That's right.
The same thing with a house. You can't do it. And so when you're trying to do something that someone else has already evolved out of, and you going into 80 years behind trying to do it, then you're not going to be able to move forward. And so that's why it was necessary to at least get this opening discussion going, and at least put that on the table. So
yeah, we need to know what this chronic condition that we have, always being late. You perfectly illustrated that. And then also too, we have to also remember that the processes that the European has already kind of metamorphosized out of does nothing but a playground to them. You know what I mean? So here we are, we thinking that this politics game is serious. To them, it's nothing but a game.
It's a playground.
So when you see a guy or a couple of guys, black guys, going to a Trump rally and act like they're going to make a difference, and then you walking out, you being pulled out by security, and then somebody from the audience slides you in the side of the face and breaks your jaw, and then you wondering, why did I get hit? Well, dummy, sheep do not go into the wolves den and protest about the wolves eating the sheep.
And we did it.
You don't do that.
Yeah.
So you're right. The lack of education on these processes, especially the economic one, because economics drives everything else.
Yes.
Economics drives the politics.
Yes.
There's no doubt about that.
Yes.
So we need to understand what's going on with this aging economy, and understand where we're at, where they're at, and then where we're at. I guess my question is, can we catch up?
Well, that's a question that will take some time. The can we part is, sure, you can do anything if you are prepared to do it. But our problem has been lack of preparation. I'll say this. We've had a lot of examples around the world of people coming from behind to get on their feet and turn situations into successes. So I won't say that it's not going to be possible. But I'll say this. When I brought up the Bill Gates situation around him using the research that was clearly objectively done, and then creating something out of it, this is what we've got to get in the habit of doing. And so we have not done a good job.
The Chinese don't have no problem doing that?
No, they take everything these whites have done and reverse engineer it.
The Chinese do not have a problem doing that. So why do you have to feel guilty of doing it for your people?
Yeah, and we're doing that. The point is that you've seen from me a methodical process of looking at things that need to be done and carefully figuring out how to do them. That's why I went to Howard, went through the PhD program, got the research methods and statistics training, got demography training, and then started applying it.
Which we now see is very key.
Yeah, you gotta have a diversified ability to view stuff. You can't view it, because I see what's happening out in our public where people have zero understanding that there are over 46 research designs that you could utilize in situations, and thousands of statistics.
You'll go over the books a little later on about how we can educate ourselves and to catch up.
We've got to get better at that, because most people are trying to use common sense. What do we call common sense? They're trying to use what they call logic. You don't study. That's not a method.
No.
Common sense is not a method. Logic is a process, but it's not a method. The method is utilized on top of the logic.
Yes.
So you have the logic, because you stated some conclusions, and you use the method to carry out a picture of that specific situation in such a way to explain it. And that's what we're doing today.
Yeah.
Trying to put in place an argument that allows us to answer your question, which is, well, what do we need? And I guess that's what you would ask. What do we need in order to catch up?
That's a better way of phrasing it.
Yeah, well, the way I would deal with it is do what Gates did. Now, they did the study, but he used it.
Right.
We've got to get in the habit of targeting the type of studies we need to do them, to get the objective information we've gotten, and then organizing groups to carry out activity reflective of that data.
Right.
We haven't done that. That's the first stage.
Okay.
And so the organization of groups come out of the actual study itself. You don't organize a group and then try to do a study.
Right.
No, you get the study to find out why you need the group, the type of group you got.
Right.
But we've been asked backwards on that one. We've been just throwing people together to go around and debate and talk. You can see not going to do anything. But when you get to the point where you've studied something carefully, and then you begin to organize the teams that are necessary to carry out the activity that results taught you, then you can put yourself in a position to win. That's what I would say. And then it evolves to a point where, like China, you come from last in the world with the economy, now you're first.
Right.
Because it evolved to that point when they started after the Boxer Rebellion, and then organized themselves to take that country, organized themselves to build around what was necessary to keep people out from destroying them, and then did what they had to do to evolve it.
Right.
So we haven't done any of the preparation that is necessary to do the things that they did.
We'll probably go into some of the intangibles that we need to do as African people to even think about even trying to pursue what you just said, because we still need to understand what it takes for us to unify, and maybe unify is not a good word.
No, it's not.
But to consolidate our efforts as African people for a common cause.
Yeah.
That's probably better than unification.
Yeah, because the unification is really romantic. We should have known that. It shows people are not studying, because you don't unify opposites. I mean, groups that are not against. You don't unify Christians and Muslims.
It's not going to
happen. You can't do it. And so if you're somewhere with somebody else's religion and you're trying to unify, it's not going to work. Okay? You're somewhere with somebody else's economic system and you got different ones, it's not going to work.
No.
You've got to work out which one is feasible in order to push your population forward with that group. And they have to agree to that.
Yes.
You can't have 10 people in there with different views of what's going to happen trying to run it. And that's what we've had. We've had people talk about unity, and you can't have unity when you have people that are not on the same foundational economic, political, social, and cultural foundation, and moral.
Right.
You can't have people that are immoral in a moral group running around.
Not going to happen.
It's not going to work. And so that's what we've had, a situation where people say we got to unify. Unify with what?
Yeah.
You know, you can't unify until you make a decision to clean all the garbage out and start from scratch and say, oh, we're going to build on this. So the economy that we're discussing, this is what we're talking about. The economic system has literally run its course. It's operating on credit now. And what I mean by that is, go and look up what the national debt is $23 trillion. I didn't say million.
Most of it owned to China.
China's got 7 billion of it. I mean,
7
7 trillion, close to 7 trillion. Yeah, so the point I'm trying to make is that's what I mean by it's running on credit, it's running on debt. And that debt at some point is called in. And that's what we're talking about. And so obviously they're going to stretch it out as much as they can stretch it out. But those 8 things that you listed, they'll check them off and move down the list.
Yes, they will.
And they'll get to number 8.
Yeah.
Number 8 is what's behind number 7.
Shall we read number 8 again?
You've already said it. Just send them to it. They'll get to that number 8.
Implement the final solution, for example, extermination, in a form relative to the technical destructive capacities of the society. So it's going to be a very, very elaborate type of extermination. And extermination doesn't necessarily mean the death of the physical body.
Yeah.
The extermination of what we had talked about earlier before we turned the cameras on was this so-called superorganism.
Yeah, so explain that.
Okay?
Yeah.
This superorganism that me and Tdka was talking about, we also explored this in a recovery group that I used to be, because most of you guys know I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict for 26 going on 27 years. So we used to talk about this superorganism all the time, and how as we as people, not just African people, because I'm in a recovery group, because there's Europeans in this group as well, but we talked about it, and I'm applying it now to African people. The superorganism has a collective super psyche. So we survived somehow slavery and very traumatic experiences throughout our history. Somehow along the way, we've forgotten what the pain, the hyper pain, the hyper humility, the hyper loss of everything that you can imagine coming over here as an enslaved person or people, not knowing what the language was, not knowing what the economic situation was, not knowing what was going on beyond the 300 acres of the land that you lived on, not knowing what's going on in the outside world. You had no idea what was going on. All those things. We came out of that and we started to rebuild ourselves in our own unique ways. You know, like Tulsa, other communities. You know, we started having our own banks. What we literally did was just mimic what we saw was the European, society and its culture and its economic, situation. So we just mimicked it, but we recovered. The question I posed to Brother Tdka here was, as a superorganism, African people, how does the collective super psyche experience the humility, the pain, and those other things? It's got to be something very, very traumatic. Long term, short term, you can explain to. What do you think?
Yeah, you're right on that. And I told you where I thought when you said that the short term thing crystallizes the process in the group that is happening to. And what I mean by that is when you see what happened in Nazi Germany, that was a 6-year moment where these people were gassed and
You're right. That's a good point.
Yeah, and then crushed and treated, skinned, gold pulled out of their mouth, skinned, used for all kinds of experiments in a 6-year period. And so they never can forget that. And so you see on everything they do, it's tied to that. As you explained, our Holocaust was stretched out over 500 years. And obviously you throw the Arabs in there, it's 1,000.
At 1,500.
1,500.
Let's just say 2,000
Throw them in there. So it's stretched out. And so at that point, it ends up being a situation where you end up having a chronic ailment, so to speak, over centuries. Instead of a moment where it's a crash moment where you just like, I can never do this again. I'll never allow this again. Well, that explanation from you allows me to write properly about that, because that's what we're discussing right now. Because that moment is
unfolding. You go with that damn journal project.
Yeah, well, I got to do it. I got to do it. And you'll have a whole book come out of that, because that's a great discussion we were having earlier, and for our audience that this moment that's unfolding right now, we'll produce that. And we're not going to produce it. The moment itself produces.
It's going to produce it.
Yeah,
and it said just like you got to remember, guys, what this says here. It says that it's going to be relative to the technical destructive capacities of the society. So right now, it's going to be something that's unique for right now in this day and time.
That's right.
Not what happened in the 40s.
No, it's not going to be stretched out like that. No.
Not the 1500s, the 1600s, none of that. It's going to be something that is going to be unique for right now in this time.
Good point. And so that's what I was meaning when I was saying you got that right when you brought us to that point of discussing something that is not chronic, but something that happens as a flash that really crystallizes in a person or a generation. That's what it's going to do, a generation that ends up saying, okay, we have got to get our act together so this never happens again. Now it happened to the Chinese with the Boxer Rebellion.
That's true.
They were standing out there with their karate.
That's true.
Standing around there with their karate and thinking that stuff was going to stand up. They had these great master martial artists, and the whites had these sorry little things running around with guns. And these sorry little things kill every last one of those martial artists that they brought in there to do the fighting. And so that crystallized that for them, revolution comes through a barrel of a gun. And never went back. And so everything is built on an understanding of that crystallizing moment.
What they do is a romantic, the martial arts is a romanticism for them now.
Yeah. Well,
it's not something that we would consider something that they can use, but it's romantic. They keep it it's part of their culture.
Yeah.
So it's romantic. It's a romantic thing.
Yeah, but they understand clearly that they learn a lesson from that. And see, every lesson is important. And what I mean by that is when you go through stuff where you appreciate that you don't have a car, you don't know how to make one, but they do. You don't have a rocket. You don't know how to make one, but they do. Well, how am I going to learn how to make it? Well, either I'm going to spend the time that they spent, the 100 years that they spent trying to catch up, or I'm going to take something they built, like a car or a rocket or whatever, reverse engineer it, and then build it ourselves. That's the way you get to it. And so I'm not talking about cars now, I'm talking about ideas. See, you got all these ideas that are floating around, and people are not appreciating them. They're trying to use one ideal against the other to knock down that ideal, to say I was smart, I was right, instead of trying to figure out where these ideals fit and reverse engineer that material on a higher level. So that means in substance you're getting a reflection of what's happening now. You can't use Marx from the 1800s now.
No.
He's talking about mechanical production. He doesn't know anything about computer automated. They have no computers.
Don't have a clue.
They don't have a clue. So when people are trapped in a period saying there's something, I saw folk, labeling me the other day. I was just like, okay, why would someone do
They
that?
called you a Marxist, right?
Well, they've been doing that the whole time. Stupid, ignorant, But having said that, someone's labeling me conscious. I'm just conscious.
What the hell, yeah.
What the hell is that? And then African Senate, and I mean this. I said, well, I never was able to define what African Senate was because everybody had a different definition, so I couldn't be it.
Yeah.
I just said I'm an African that's scientific, or a scientific African, which means in substance that I'm going to be focusing on everything as an African scientifically, as best I can.
Rightfully so.
And that's how I look at it. But having said that, people label you and mislabel you and put you in a position where they try to limit you to that. So no, I'm not a part of any conscious community. I'll bring that out. My positions are that I'm for African people on every level. I'm not mystical. I have no use for religions. I'll tell you that openly. They're useless.
They should know that.
They should know that. Okay, just useless. Don't bring that here. We can't use it. Because if we could have used it for the 1,500 years, these whites and Arabs were imposing their will on over 600 million of us, it would have counted for something.
We need to have another conversation about that.
Yeah.
Specifically, because there's other things I want to explore. Because everybody will go directly to the Haitian Revolution and discuss the merits of that. But I don't even want to.
Well, you brought it up. I at least have to make one comment. I got to make one comment.
Okay.
They are wrong about that mystical stuff. They are terribly wrong. And what they're wrong about is not understanding that the people who were fighting the Haitian Revolution, many of the soldiers came from the American Revolution. They were blacks who were fighting on the side of the British and who took their technical skills there. Mysticism didn't win anything there. The technical preparation won.
I knew you was going to go there.
And they were wrong. And so you got to really understand, you can pray all you want about anything you want to pray about, but if you don't know how to do anything, which is our problem, we don't get anything done. You can pray that you want a car built, but if you don't know how, or someone doesn't know how to build one, it's not going to get built. And that's been our problem.
You said common sense, and that's common sense. You have to have the educational capacity and the informational capacity to perform anything, any kind of, and the mystical thing is not going to get you there. You know what I mean? But I promise you guys that we're going to have a separate discussion.
We can go in detail on that.
We can go into detail on that. So this is not the conversation for that.
Yeah.
But yes, because I believe, I agree totally with the Casa said. So you know how we feel about that. But I promise you guys that we'll come back to that, revisit that, and we'll have a conversation about that. All right. You talked about the developmental process and the societal anatomy and all those kind of things. So where are we at right now? I know on this particular diagram,
yes,
it tells you where we're at the moment, and we're going to put these up anyway, so you guys can see these. We'll put these up. You'll see it on the video.
Okay, if I can give a percentage, I'll help. I'm best at percentages right now.
Okay.
So if you were looking at a ratio or something, you're just like, okay, this is 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 4-to-1. Ours, it's 25-75. In a period in history when the technology is being implemented on a mechanical level, it was like 90-10, meaning 90% manual workers and then 10% machines.
Okay.
The ratio changed to almost in the 1950s, it was like 50-50, meaning 50% of that production took place with a worker with some type of mechanized machine in their hand to put that car together. They weren't nailing it together themselves. They had some type of machine that did the screwing and all of that. and they just put the door on there and then put the screw in there with the machine. Well, by the 1990s, that transitioned into like 60-40. And I would argue that we are right now around 75-25.
Okay.
75-25. 75 technology, 25 worker. The moment that composition of technology to worker transitions into something like 80-20 or 85-15, that's when you openly see something higher than the whites putting out Hispanics. Let me get to that. Because they're just putting out the loose fruit now. The ones they know that they don't want to take care of. Okay, these people are not going to work anymore. They brought them here to do the agriculture. We don't need to get them out of here. They got children, get them out of here. Get them out of here. We ain't taking care of them. We're not giving health care, not giving them education. We're not doing that. So that's loose fruit to them. Okay? The moment that technology reaches 80-20 or 85-15 over the labor and is transitioned into the service area, then number 8, 7, and 8, those numbers that you were listing earlier, that becomes real. That's what I said.
And that super psyche trauma that we need to experience is when we experience that.
That's when it comes. And if you're not prepared with the other stuff, that's why we begin the process of, we can transition into Keperu. That's why we wrote the book Keperu, which comes out next week. This book, we're just finishing it up right now. That's the one discussing the fundamentals of past back to Africa movements. They've all been push movements, meaning pushed out.
Right.
But you have a moment now where there's a pull element.
There's a pull
where
element.
African nations are asking you to come.
Great analogy.
Yes. So this is a new development, because all the other ones were push elements. To look Liberia, to Sierra Leone, a few to Namibia and Tanzania. Those are push things. But the pull elements now are being.
There's elements to the pull part of it that you have some doubts about, but you want to wait in a holding pattern.
Yes, I do. I want to make that trip. I told you I was going to go to Namibia and then look around in that region and then see what's happening. But I really want to take my time on that.
Yeah.
So that's the next book, which is Black Book.
Okay.
But model after the Green Book. But the Keperu book allows us to really appreciate release valves. This is what we're talking about. In every situation, and this is what we're missing as a people, come to understand what are the lessons in history. What happened with the Jews in Germany, Nazi Germany? And who got out early? There was a movement in Nazi Germany in the 1890s by Herzl. He was already helping to move Jews into the Palestinian area.
That's right.
In the 1890s.
Hitler knew that.
1890s.
Yeah,
and see, we're not studying properly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 30 years later, the ones who couldn't get out are the ones who got executed, exterminated. So again, those processes have to start decades before in order to be prepared for something. You can't just wait until the hurricane gets here to put something on your windows. Or at least, I shouldn't say put something on your windows, because it's one of these major hurricanes, you need to be getting out of town.
You get out of there.
Yeah, and so that's what we miss. We miss an understanding of studying carefully what has happened with other populations in similar situations, and then seeing what their release valves were, and then doing what's necessary to push that forward. So my point was that we're at around 75-25 now, the composition of labor to technology, which is important. Just look at any industry, look how a car is made, and then see what the composition of what workers to the car, to the technology is. Now, in some places in South Korea and in Japan, it's almost 95% where technology, almost completely a factory is run with machines.
That's right.
And those types of technological innovations will be brought here. And at a certain point, completely whole areas and industries will be transformed into that, because they're really competing for profits. And if you can sell your commodities at a cheaper price that it costs the others to make them, then you're going to win that market.
Exactly.
So again, that's what's taking place on the planet. And having said that, we have to get prepared for understanding what's coming. And I brought this earlier when I said about tailing. All our movements, we've been tailing stuff. We tailed into the civil rights movement. We tailed in the movements before the civil rights movement. And what I mean by that is the Black Power movement was a tailing movement. The African Senate movement was a tailing movement. And what I mean by that is those foundational things that you should have done your research and preparation for so that you could be prepared for them, like Herzl and those did 30 years earlier, and then did something about it 30 years earlier, we didn't do. We wait till things broke out and thought it was because we were doing something that they broke out. And I'm saying, no, you didn't change the Supreme Court, the whites did. You didn't change the Supreme Court. They're the ones who changed the Supreme Court so that they could change Brown versus Board of Education. They did that. You didn't do that. And so you don't understand that they're the ones in charge of that process. And when they want to shut it down, like BAK decision in 1978, the BAK decision, the one dealing with ending quotas, they decided that. We didn't decide that, they decided that. And when they want to put the people out of the country, they're deciding that. And so again, I say that to say that we've got to get better at not tailing stuff, waiting for something to happen and then react to it, instead of studying the process, figuring out and appreciating what we've studied carefully, appreciating where things are going, and then making our decision on what we're going to do after we understand where they're going. And that's what we haven't done.
I had a personal experience with a brother-in-law of mine who happened to be Jamaican. And we do know what happened with 9/11 and how the government came in with a whole new department of Homeland Defense. All of a sudden that got created. Billions of dollars to create that. And the FBI, CIA now reporting to those people. So now you got another level of hierarchy. And then you're talking about the Patriot Act that came after that. So my so-called brother-in-law, and I'm not disparaging Jamaicans at all, but we do know Jamaicans who are very, very proud people. And even though they're living here in the United States, they might even be married to an American, they refuse to get American citizenship. I'm pretty sure that's changed by now. But my brother-in-law was one of those people. I'm a Jamaican, I'm a proud Jamaican. I don't have to get citizenship. I can go back and forth to my country anytime I want. But yeah, that's nice. But when that man comes over to you and says, "Yo, let me see your citizenship papers. You don't have citizenship? Well, I'm married to the American sister here." I said, "Really? What that mean? Take your ass to York, Pennsylvania. We're gonna sit you up there in that prison for 2 years because you are an alien in this country. Because you happen to have some misdemeanors on your record. You might be having something that's going towards a felony. Once you get a criminal record as an alien, whether you're married to an American citizen or not, you are still considered, you might not be illegal, but you're still an alien. The Patriot Act makes sure that they had the capacity to do that now.
And so they're doing it.
So they shipped his ass out. He's in Jamaica. He can't see his kids no more. Rest in peace for my sister who was married to him. She's passed several years ago. And she couldn't see her husband. Because of some bullshit ego. And not understanding what the system was all about.
That's it.
Educate yourself, people. Educate yourself.
I'm glad you brought that discussion up. I can't follow with that up with a better example. That was a great example. So that's where we're at.
That's where we're at.
It's certain that the research is done and then carrying out the behavior ahead of time. And he didn't do it.
No, he didn't do it. He didn't want to hear it. He didn't want to hear it. I tried to talk to him. He didn't want to hear it.
And so while other folk are messing around in the past just for credit, we should use the past in order to understand what is happening in the present and then what will happen in the future. And that's what we have to take these studies as. Means to study something over time to figure out what has happened, and then just like a doctor diagnoses something, when this occurs, what's going to happen next. That's why you want to see the whole life of a disease. It's coronavirus. They want to see if it's like the flu, that it will go away in April or May, when the sun comes out and it gets warmer. They want to see the life of it. They want to see what it does. So you remember when they used the Tuskegee experiments on black people?
Yeah.
So they could see the whole life. And so they ruined thousands of black people's families and lives so they can get an understanding of a disease. They killed them. They literally killed them. And so this is what you really want to understand when you're studying something. You want to see what the life of that thing is. I wanted to see what the life of feudalism was, moving into manufactories that ultimately end up being the base for capitalism. I wanted to see the life of it and then see what happens when it's over. See, Germany, Nazi Germany was only a bottleneck. You see, it was a bottleneck of capitalism, meaning markets were filled, glutted. And that's what they did to those people after they couldn't sell that stuff. Germany was forced out in World War I. They had all these restrictions placed on them, and so they literally were being strangled by the other European nations.
Right.
And so having said that, that's what laid the foundation for that intense period of white reaction that they applied to a population that didn't look specifically like them, even though white. And having said that, you have to understand how Europeans carry out their behavior in times of crisis. You have to study that carefully. And so we have not been careful enough in our assessment of things. And this is what I was saying to you earlier. I don't want people labeling me as anything. I'm a student of history, first of all, but with scientific training in research methods and statistics and demography. And I apply that to everything I can apply it to. I'm not tossing out any ideal that I have not vetted properly. It may fit somewhere.
You're right.
Because I see it as a process. I don't see it as one ideal fighting another. I see it as a process. Well, where does that fit? Where does that fit in this process?
What elements can we use?
What elements can we use? And so we're not, and it's not eclectic use. It's where it really fits. I mean, where would it really fit? Not where would you guess that it fit. But you throw them in there like you're throwing marbles into a box.
Right.
No, and so I say all that to say, we've got to get better at what you just brought up, which is getting in a position where when we get information vetted out properly and understood as a process, that we use it. And that has not happened. So. So I'm glad you allowed me to open this with that. Yeah.
So we did a pretty good job of tracing the decline. And it's not so obvious to a lot of people of this aged economy and this aged society. You have here developmental process, but now it's in the process of
degenerative.
It's a degenerative process now.
And so the process that is important for our readers is that we get better at following something from beginning to end. Right. That's what I would say there.
We were talking about what we can do as people. Obviously, we have to educate ourselves on the processes of this aged economy and aged society. But more than likely, we also talked about the dichotomy between the unification and the mobilization of our efforts. Right? We don't want to say unified because we know that's not a good formula for us.
No, it's not.
Because we have so many factions and so many sub-factions of different things that we are now part of.
Yeah.
It's just hard, especially if we're involved in religious dogmas and things of that nature. It's going to be very, very difficult for us to so-called unify on a level where it's going to be effective for us as a collective.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's a gentleman by the name of Fundi Sanyika Anwise, and he wrote a book called The African Personality, Lubrication for Liberation. I was given this recommended book by Baba Maruti in one of his classes. Matter of fact, the class was about his new book, To Educate the People, which is very good. You guys should get that. But it says here, how can African people get along? And it's a primer on conflict management. Fundi Sanyika Yanwise. And I'll read a quick section out of it. Conflict management and resolution requires, at minimum, the realization that conflict need not kill a relationship. Disagreements are survivable. A commitment from the involved parties to do just that. For example, resolve conflict and move or return the relationship to a state of peace. And then number 3, recognition that conflicts and disagreements in human relationships are inevitable as rain. Therefore, like rain, must be anticipated and prepared for in advance. And like rain, disagreements, when prepared for and effectively managed, can yield benefits. So we see now that we're suffering from the inability to understand what disagreements and agreements are, what resolution and what conflict is. And just like it says about the rain, you're going to have rain. Can you prepare for those kind of rain events? You know what I mean? So we see now that we know of some groups and people and individuals who just can't seem to get past the disagreement stage. You know, and because the disagreement stage, to get out of the disagreement stage, it means that you have to humble yourself. Mm-hmm. You don't have to necessarily say you're sorry. You just have to humble yourself and say, you know what, my brother, you know what, my sister. Let's come to an understanding of where we're at and where we disagree at. See if we can find common ground, and let's move forward for that. You know, because what you're bringing to the table and what I'm bringing to the table is much more powerful than each of our individual efforts separately by themselves.
Yes.
A collective effort is going to be much more effective than the individual effort.
Yeah.
Man, am I looking at pie in the sky, man? What do you?
I'm not going to call you a country preacher, but the point of the matter is you said a lot there, and I think I'm going to, obviously when you give me the name of it, I'll get that book.
Yeah.
The thing that came to my mind when you were speaking was respect. Mm-hmm. You know, I have a respect for you. You have a respect for me. We've never had disrespect for each other. Mm-hmm. And we've had disagreements. Yeah, we did. We disagreed on a couple of things. Yeah, and then I'm just like, okay, well, I respect your position, but I can't do that. And then you, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. Right. So the point of the matter is, I lost nothing because I couldn't do that, or something that you said. So I say all that to say is, you can see that there's literally no respect in these situations where the person is really people are trying to pull themselves up on others by disrespecting them. Right. And I've seen that. I've just seen, and that's why I said never involve myself in it, the character assassination. Mm-hmm. You know, whenever you get in a debate about something, an argument, and when you're losing, it's going to immediately go to character assassination. Right. I've never seen a situation that didn't go to character assassination, especially when the people are trying to build themselves up from the debate. You see, they're not going into the debate as, okay, I want to find out more information. They're going out into the debate in order to prove that they're better than the next person. Right. And so whatever it takes, if they feel like they're losing, they're going to move into the area of dirt, which is character assassination. So I say all that to say is that we have got to get better at respecting each other, you know, even if we disagree. And my point was, in tying to that, was that even with information you're getting from people, you got to find out where it fits. Right. I mean, if it's something that has teeth, you see, you've got to find out, okay, it may not look like what I got, but it's got to fit somewhere because it has teeth. It's got to fit. It has grip. It has grip. It has evidence. It has a foundation to it. So it may be something that fits here. You see, it may be that elephant's trunk. Right. It may be the side of the elephant, which is the wall. It may be the foot. The foot. Yeah, it may be something, the trunk, which is like a snake. It may be something that fits somewhere outside of what I was thinking. And so we've got to get, because I saw this, and I saw people trying to disrespect the elders and all, right. You know, and calling people names and all of this. I'm just like, well, why would you do that? Just present your evidence, present your material, and move on. Why do you have to diminish somebody? I saw people trying to diminish Diop and Asa Hilliard. Right. I'm just like, why would you do that? And Obinga, people who don't have a PhD in physics are nothing. Diminishing great people who put their work in and left you to build on it. Build on top of it. See, we can't stay in Booker T. Washington's period, but he put in his work. He put in his work. Du Bois, we can't stay in the 1800s, late 1800s, but he put in his work. Garvey, We can't stay in that period.
Not at all.
But they put in the work, take the best of what they did, push the other side. You ain't got to debate that.
Right.
Just pull the part that can be built upon
Right.
and move it forward. And
Right.
that's what we're not seeing.
That's what we're not doing. And I want to give Baba Marlima Baruti much credit for recommending this book to me. African Personality, Lubrication for Liberation.
He's another good man.
Yeah, brother Baba.
Just does great
Marlima
work.
Baruti is an excellent man. His new book, The Educated People, is excellent. You
Yeah,
got to
just
get
great
that.
work.
And get Fundy, this book by Fundy Sanyika Anwise. Yeah, definitely get this one. So what's on the horizon, my brother? You want to talk about Kepperu real quick?
Yeah, I wanted to say that.
Let's close it out.
Yeah, closing out, we were finishing up a process whereby BAK was a summary of what's taking place in this country. As I explained to you before, it's like a diagnosis, of a disease. You're following it from the moment that it starts to its life process, and then appreciating where it goes based on how similar diseases have gone that were similar to it. And then you're trying to at least produce the necessary antibodies or whatever you're going to produce that allows you to have a prognosis for recovery. And so again, BAK did that. It's an internal study that moves the analysis of the country from 1492, when the invasions begin to occur with Columbus, into the Western Hemisphere, moving from that to 1607, 1619, when the Africans were brought in, and then how they set their government up, the organization of that government, and then obviously the enslaving of our population to build this society's economy. And this is what they built it on. At one point, it was built on tobacco, and that was the basis. They actually used it as money. And then it was cotton. Cotton became king.
Forget about sugar cane.
Sugar cane again. But again, that obviously is the mainly the islands. But here they did have it here, and
Down in the Gulf area.
Yeah. So yeah, that's true. So we bring those three together. But having said that, we built the economy for this nation, and having built the economy for this nation, we trickled through the sectors that it allowed us to move from. They kept us in agriculture until the 1950s and 60s, right in there. And that really is a reflective of the civil rights movement. It's tied directly to white people saying we need these, what's in manufacturing now. And so you have to then make the changes from the segregation you'd set up to keep them in agriculture, to move them into manufacturing and mining and construction, all the other areas. That's what they mining, they had them in there too. But construction and manufacturing, they had to find a way to open those doors, which means in substance education had to be given to people to allow them to get in those sectors. Having said that, we trickle in at a point where the technology trickled in too. And so at some point, the technology replaced us, began the process of replacing us. So as we were going in, the technology was forcing us out. Construction, agriculture, manufacturing, mining, and now the technology is moving into service. You go to Walmart. I was at Walmart. I tried to show a picture of it, and I was just so shocked. I've been talking about it, but it was shocked to see a machine that's programmed to mop the store without anybody driving it. And this thing is moving.
Saw it?
I saw it. I took pictures of it. I'll show you
pictures.
Yeah,
please.
I'll send them to you.
Matter of fact, I might just put them on the video.
Yeah, these machines are moving up and down the lane.
Matter of fact, I'm going to put that in there right now.
I have my buggy, and I'm trying to get out of the way because the machines are moving up and down these aisles.
I've never seen that.
I'll show it to you. And so I'm saying all that to say that technology is now moving into the area that we've been forced to, that we have no place else to go.
Right.
And when you have no place else to go, then the questions of what you're going to do come up.
Right there.
And so we were working on the next book, which will be out next week. It's about 463 pages. I still got 2 more days of cut downs.
Okay.
And so it'll end up being around 420, something like that, once we cut it in. But what it is Kepperu.
Okay.
And for most people know, the Kepperu has some meaning about transformation, change.
Yes.
And again, this is what we're going through. But they're lessons from past Back to Africa movements, because this is a release valve. We know what happened in this country. Everybody's done a book on Liberia. Everybody's done a book on Sierra Leone. They've explained what took place under those conditions, who were leading those processes. Mainly, Europeans were leading them initially. They were, the American Colonization Society was putting out black folk. Slave masters were primary financiers for these organizations. And they were putting out the freed enslaved blacks. They're putting them out. They were freed and they getting them out of here. So anything that will impact their system. Sierra Leone is obviously peopled by populations that fought against, in the Revolutionary War, against the whites on the British side. And the British had put them there, and the whites, Canadians there, is like, the white people there, no, get them out of here. And so, feeling that they had to carry something out, they sent them back as a colony into Sierra Leone. So we can explain all of that.
Okay.
It's only a few processes where black folk completely had charge of. People bring up Paul Cuffey and think that he financed that process. No, he worked with the Quakers. And so you begin to see that we never had control of anything until Garvey. I mean, there were African Colonization Society meetings with Delaney and all of those, but we're talking about somebody making a decision. Okay, well, we want to start this to go back to Africa, and we got to get ships. That's black, completely black vision of it. And so there are lessons that are going to be learned from that. And obviously, people started going back and forth in trickles in the 1960s and 70s to Africa, black folk, and only a few. But the point of the matter is, those were not people who were forced out. They were deciding to leave because of the bad situations that they were seeing. All leading up to that period were forced out. And so this is a moment, we're talking about it, where there's some discussion around pull factors instead of just push factors. We're going to detail the push factors and the laws, we call them laws now, laws of those push factors. I mean, under what conditions were people so fed up that they got themselves together and got out? Because remember, in some of these movements into Liberia and into Sierra Leone, the mortality rate was 80%. Meaning in a 10-year period, 8 out of the 10 of the people who left died. So it's like a death sentence. And the opposite whites who were financing it knew this. It's like, okay, well, put them over that swampy area. And so I say all that to say, this time, those lessons are being applied to the modern period. And people will appreciate that at least three-fourths of the book deals with the modern period.
Okay.
So we don't just stay in that period where
you still got to set the foundation of how everything evolved.
So I told you that I actually appreciate being put off of Facebook for a while, because I got a chance to make some decisions on how to rewrite it. Because I thought I had it ready to go last month, and then in my time off from dealing with people's minds and I'm just thinking, how can I explain this in such a way where people get an understanding of what needs to happen first, and then get the process that leads up to it. You see, instead of just trying to show them the whole process and then at the very end, while they sleep, drop on them. It's not going to work. So that's what this is, Caparoo. It's literally just a matter of making a few more cuts. It'll be out next week. And I wanted to bring up that it is in line with BAK. It's in line with this. These two should be together. This and Caparoo and BAK. They should be together, because once you finish reading this one, you'll know why this one was necessary. You know, most people don't get the appreciation that, we're thinking about things in sequence as a process. And so once they get through with BAK, they get an understanding of, oh, I see why this one is necessary. Because this one only, in a condensed way, explains what we just went over.
And if I have any recommendation to anybody who even has BAK2 right now or going to get BAK2, make sure you not only read this, but analyze it. And take notes.
You have been doing that.
I have been doing that.
I saw that.
I've been doing that. Take notes on this, because this to me is a very, very, probably one of the most important books that you've written.
Yeah, well,
You and your team. I mean,
Yeah.
for African Americans,
Yeah.
out of any other book that you put together,
yeah,
this has to be the most important one.
Yeah.
Because we look at American history as something that is not important for us.
yeah.
You better take it seriously.
It's the foundation of our
Yeah.
being,
Yeah.
and we haven't done a good
Right.
job of that.
Mhm.
So I want to thank you again for organizing these little meetings
Mhm.
and putting us in a position where we can explain something
Right.
that's really complex in a simple way. This is what you and I talked about earlier, that it's not about trying to use all kind of big words to try to explain
Mhm.
something to somebody. That's not necessary. We've got to find a way to meet people where they are at and then put information in their hands that they can think about that allows them to make the proper decisions about it, like
Right.
we talked about Bill Gates.
Right.
You've got to be able to get the information that tells you what has happened that will allow you to understand what will happen. And see, that's what we're missing. We don't have those links. And once you know what will happen, you prepare for what will happen.
Right.
Not what has,
Right.
what will happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. So thank you again.
You're welcome. What else is on the horizon?
Well, most people know we just finished this one a few months ago. It's a fully colored.
Mhm. That's the Kemet.
Kemet, yeah, this is important. It's in schools now. Children are getting
Yeah.
it. It's very.
My
very
granddaughter loves that book.
Well, I can tell
My
you.
granddaughter loves that.
You see
book.
the smile on my face.
She loves that
It
book.
was for the children.
She's 5 years old.
Yeah,
She loves that book.
it was for the children. And
Yeah.
I can say this: you see people debating and arguing. Well, who are these people and all this and all that? And we got 1,000 pictures, color, and I actually have already improved this one.
Okay.
We got it up to 650 pages
Okay.
now, so when it comes out again, it's going to
Okay.
have 2,000 pictures. But instead of debating with people, just show evidence.
And look for, and I agree.
Yeah, it's
Look forward to the journey with this book, because especially when you got young kids, young
Yeah.
children,
Yeah.
as they grow, their
Yeah.
understanding of this is going to change.
Yeah,
And you have to be there to guide them through the process,
Yeah.
so they can evolve into this African consciousness that we talk about.
that's right.
You
That's
know, or
right.
this African centered thing that you can call it anything you want,
Mhm.
but you know what she's going to become? My little grandchild is going to be an African scientist, man.
That's what
I
I'm.
can see it coming.
That's what, yeah, well,
Because she's asking me all kinds of questions. She said, Pop, how'd they do that? She be looking at it, she says, how'd they do that part right there? And these are people from 5,000 years ago, and they did that.
yeah.
She's a scientist. She's a scientist already, man.
It's for them because the good thing about children is they're not contaminated.
Yeah,
I don't have to argue with somebody when I show these children this.
man. She
I mean,
loves-
you don't have to argue with them. It's like these are the people that were there before the Arabs got there,
That's
or
right.
before the Greeks got
Before the
there.
Greeks got there.
These are the people,
Mhm.
and so we don't have to argue with them. And so again, we're doing a good job. I'm smiling about it because when you brought up your granddaughter,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the children who
Yeah.
have this book now. You know, they're buying it for the children.
Right.
And
And,
so-
but before you go on further, don't make the mistake that I hear people saying that the Greeks were black. Don't make that mistake. The African people who lived on that landmass before the Indo-Aryan people came down that called themselves Greek were black.
Yeah, those weren't Greeks.
The black people that were there were not Greeks.
That's right.
Okay, so the ancient Greeks were not black.
That's right.
Please differentiate yourself when you say that.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to make sure I put that out there.
Yeah, and I'm glad you put it out there because so many people are just confused about demography.
Mhm.
I have a PhD in that.
Mhm.
I know about migration trends.
Mhm.
I know about population replacements.
Mhm.
And so you see those Arabs sitting over there with your stuff, they weren't there 1,500 years ago.
Wasn't there?
It didn't look like that 2,000 years ago. It didn't look like that 5,000 years ago.
Nope.
It looked like this 5,000 years ago because the people presented the pictures of themselves as they were.
Yeah.
Now again, if you're going to try to say, okay, no, they paint them black and brown for a reason, it's symbolic, well, you got to say that for the whites too. Well, the Greeks are painting white for it's symbolic.
Well, good for
See,
the
if
Germans.
you're going to lie like that, you
Yeah.
got to say that for them too. So no, it's not that. The point I'm trying to make in agreeing with you is we've got to get better at understanding processes. And you just made a clear statement of one. Just because somebody was on a landmass first doesn't mean they're the same population.
They're not the
that
same
moved in
population.
there. You see, that's not the same population.
Yeah.
You know, you look here, these whites and us, we weren't here. The populations that got put on those reservations, those were the populations that were here.
Right.
So yeah, so you know about Maat.
Right.
We redid that, moved it up to 817 pages, cleaned it up, and put ourselves in a position where it's going to be a foundational book for a long time. It's the one that's the best moving book. And then we redid African time. Added about 217 pages to it.
One of the things about this book that me and you always have an ongoing discussion about is the calendar.
Yeah.
I do know that we're going to revisit that.
Yeah, well, you know, I was thinking about that 2 days ago, and I obviously should have thought about you, because I was like, wow, you know, where did I cue this up? So what I did was cue it up. Whenever I cue something up within that year, I got a folder that has the year 2020. Whenever I cue something up, I know I'm going to do it that year. And so I already have those numbers, meaning from 7,725 years ago, I got them attached to the numbers that end up being 2020.
Okay.
I got them. So people can then say, well, what's 1896? And then they could see what the Kmt year would be. So that book is about 210 pages right now.
Okay.
And so I'm gonna turn it over to you once I get to it. But we were working on it for years, but we stopped because we knew we couldn't put it in this.
I've had several discussions, not just in a post, but with some of the brothers that I know in the community about the calendar.
Yes.
And about when you were going to release something more definitive.
Yeah.
And I said that it's coming. I knew that you were working on it.
It's coming this year.
So that's why I wanted to bring it up now.
It's coming this year. I queued it up, and it's going to be useful too. Again, we're using Diop's work as a foundation because he obviously tied everything to the Sirius B, and then the process when they could objectively, empirically see it. And once you see it, then you organize your calendar around it, so that you'll be waiting at 1,460 years once you've seen that for it to come back around again.
Right.
Got to be really smart to do that.
Yes,
and that's what was going on there with them. And so that's what we're tying it to. Most people stop and don't understand. You've got to, first of all, get that 1,460 years added on to whatever you're doing, so that the people saw it first for that long period of time to make a decision that this is coming back around.
Yep.
You see, and they kept knowledge of it.
Yeah.
And then you begin with, 1,460 plus 1,460, and you start adding them up, plus the 2020, and you end up with 7,725.
I am just amazed that anybody can sit and come up with that kind of conclusion. And then for my great grandchild to take my information through the educational process over the generations to say, okay, in 1,400 and some odd years, you're going to see this particular celestial thing occur, and then that great grandchild says, there it is.
That's right.
Now we have documentation.
That's right.
I didn't see it.
That's right.
But my multiple great grandkids saw it.
Yeah.
And I'm just amazed at the educational process that Kemet employed. Well, I am just totally, when you think about it, you have to be totally amazed by what they did and what they accomplished. You have to be amazed by that.
And appreciating how people toss our pearls to swine.
Yes.
Your summary of that is right on cue, because once I saw the pyramids and saw how the great ones were built and what went into that engineering wise, and I obviously always wanted to be an architect, so I really studied that carefully. You begin to appreciate that ran throughout their society. So the calendar was just one area.
They had to get there.
Yeah. And so when you have people who are dedicated, and I obviously took part of my life from that, who are serious about something, they leave practical things you can use. A calendar is a practical thing that you can use. The actual architecture was practical. And so what you're seeing with us right now is the ability to practically leave stuff for our generations that they can use. So yeah, African time, we redid it, cleaned up a lot, put in some new stuff, 217 new pages, and answer some questions people needed. Even put together maps that showed where things were happening in a certain period. This is what was important for young
I
people.
like that part of the book.
For young people, that was for young people,
Yeah,
so they can see where the thing was
When you
happening.
added that, I thought that was genius. I thought that was really
Well, thank you. And then this was the other, the CA, philosophy and methods. We don't want people to forget that you can't have discussions around theory without summing theories up into philosophy. You see, and you don't have discussions around method unless those methods are applied in the theory. You see, people get confused about that. You have a method, but it don't sit out there. It's applied to something, to arrive at something. And so again, methods applied to something to arrive at theory. And theory is summarized practice. And most people get that confused. Okay, well, what's the theory of car building? Well, you got to go first make one, and then lay out how you did it. That will end up being your summary theory. It end up, in most respects, being like a formula or some type of diagram summary design, but it certainly is something that our people have got to get better at. The last one is why I really fight folk on labeling our work, with stuff that I don't want to be a part of. I'm not conscious community this or nothing. There's a lot of research. There's at least 40 research designs that are discussed in here, and hundreds of statistics. I could have put thousands. I told a young person who's getting his PhD right now in the same similar area as I did that we're going to finish the book that allows me to put the last statistics in, the one dealing with multiple regression and linear path analysis, factor analysis, and ANOVA. We're going to finish. That's the highest level.
Okay.
And meta-analysis. That's the highest level of statistics. This will take a person through the master's program. I think I told me. You get to a master's.
You mentioned that in our last interview when we introduced the book.
Yeah, we get to master's with this. But the PhD, I still had about 2,000 pages left. So that's going to be another book. And we're going to end up putting that together and letting people know. But I taught this for 20 years. So it's like,
Yeah,
so I wanted to say that I wouldn't want to be like pigeonholed to any of this stuff. I respect what's taking place with some of the people who are doing work in the so-called conscious community. I respect what's taking place with Baruti and Dr. Baruti and Marcus Klein in the African Center community. Respect their work. I can see the applied elements of it with Marcus Klein. I see that with the school he set up. And I can see how he's working it. But the vast majority of people that I saw claiming this, African Center and all this, had all these mystical definitions thrown in there. And I'm just like, well, I can't be labeled with any of that because again, anything that doesn't have evidence is useless to me. So again, art of research is one that a good thing that's happening with this is getting into some of the schools also. And I look forward to the seeds that are planted in this being useful to the young people in the future.
Yeah.
So thank you again for allowing me
you're
to
welcome,
present those.
And I think again what we talked about here was the was chapter 37. We focused on that, the aged economy, the aged culture, where we at right now. On the slides here, on the illustrations here, you'll see that there and everything about where we at the moment, and more importantly, the ideology, the computer animated and automated machine production, 1990 to the present. And you have here STR with a question mark. I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, STR, scientific and technological revolution. That is asking. That's the overall thing.
Okay.
Yeah, the computer automated machine production is like the skeleton, the spinal column. It's the core of it. It's what's being applied in a specific area. But you have this scientific and technological revolution that's unfolding, just like the Industrial Revolution did. See, when you think of capitalism, you think of the Industrial Revolution. And most people don't get that. They don't understand that is what drove the industrialization of capitalism, the Industrial Revolution. Well, the scientific and technological revolution is driving this new form of society. We didn't talk about what it has to be.
Right.
Yeah, see, that's another, and I hope I get a chance to write that one.
Yeah.
Because I can't see it yet. You see, when you can't see something, you can't write about it.
No.
You're going to be speculating. But I can't see what will be reflected of around a workless society yet. Meaning where people don't have jobs. I don't see what kind of society will be able to exchange the goods that the robots produce. What would be the basis of it? Meaning, how would you get means to get your shoes or your car or your computer? How would you get that when you're not getting paid a wage or a salary? How would you get it? So I haven't been able to see what that means yet, and so I'm operating in the period where the transition is taking place and it hadn't gotten there. So that's why I have a question mark there. Even 10 years ago, I couldn't see it. I don't see it yet. So there's no way to begin to write a book about that scientific and technological revolution unless you can see it. And so that's why I put the question mark there. Yeah.
One last thing before I close out, and you had mentioned about the so-called robot that was mopping in the Walmart. You said it was?
Yeah.
I'm looking here under the service industry.
Yeah.
Where did it go to now? So it says leisure, and this is what your PhD student did for us. And you think I should put this up for people to see? Or?
You should put it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I will.
And that's only 1/3 of what he was.
1/3 of what he's done.
Yeah,
So Brother Kemet, we appreciate your efforts on this, but I want to discuss it real quick. Under the cap is this. Well, you actually talked about 5 or 6 different categories.
Mm-hmm.
Under this particular category, it was leisure, hospitality, arts and entertainment, recreation, accommodation, and food services.
Yes.
Now, as some people may know, I came out of the building industry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still in the building industry, but now I'm in property management.
Yes.
So I'm in more into design and environmental controls and things of that nature.
Yes.
Working with the state.
Yes.
That's what I do. But I started with hospitality. I started with healthcare.
Yes.
I started in long-term healthcare.
Yeah.
In other words, nursing homes.
Yeah.
I was in healthcare with a lot of the major healthcare networks on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
I told you before,
Yeah,
I used to work with Cleveland Clinics,
Yeah.
Mayo Clinic. I
Yeah.
traveled up and down the Eastern Seaboard as a consultant, training manager, training supervisors. So this field I know about.
Yes.
I came, just like you said, I came in on the end of it where technology was just starting to infiltrate that particular industry.
That's right.
And it's now starting to come in. It's behind because it's difficult to automate service.
That's right. Yeah.
This is the reason why it comes in
That's
late.
right. That's right.
So when I look at this thing here that says made bot, the housekeeping robot, I've been in this business now for 41 years.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started off, I started out in the healthcare field and in hospitality.
Yeah,
I did that first,
yeah.
the first 10 years of my career, first 10 to 12 years. I never imagined that there would be a maid bot in the industry that I'm in right now.
Yeah.
I never would imagine that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But clearly somebody saw that. Okay?
Yeah.
And I know that I'm retiring in another year or so.
That's right.
And I know that things are just going to be drastically changed.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Just now I can't go to the hospital, become a housekeeper too much. It's not going those days are going to be over.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So the reality, I guess the point I'm trying to drive home now is that the reality now is with us.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Now that it's in the service industry, it's pretty clear that automation is here to stay.
That's right.
And I just want to thank you for making that pretty clear
Yeah.
with the way that you described it today,
Yes.
illustrated it today, and that we want to emphasize that you guys go ahead and get this BAK2, start off with BAK2,
Yeah.
and educate yourself, understand where we at,
Yeah.
especially in this aged society and culture that we're in.
Yeah.
My brother,
Thank you. That's all.
thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, man.
Do good work. Always do good work. You do good work.
All right. Hotep.
Yep.